Hey everybody, welcome back to Hometown History Extra. We're here with Cisco Soto, who is a photographer and an educator in York County. So I guess it was about a year ago, he hosted the showing of Hex Hollow, the documentary that we recommended over at Market View Arts. My mom and I attended, and so when the three of us got together and talked about who we wanted to bring on as our extra, we've got Cisco here, who was heavily involved with showing the documentary, the discussion after, but he also has a family who grew up in Southern York County and remembered a lot of the stories too. So we thought that firsthand experience would be, pretty important to us. So one of our first questions, this will take about 15 minutes. We're going to ask Cisco some questions, and then we're going to open it up to you if you have more questions or things that you want to add. But one of the first things that we're interested in is, so you showed this documentary, you showed Hex Hollow.
First, we're going for it. Thank you to Shane Free, the director of the documentary, for letting us show it.
Yep. So fill in the gaps. What did Dami and I not hit? What are some more details that we should have included?
Well, I'll use the quote that we talked about before we started rolling. Was Ross McGinnis was famously said, "This is not a ghost story; it's a crime story." So probably most people in the room probably already grew up knowing, like, you knew somebody who had a paranormal experience, or they told the stories of this, and this, and it was always used as a scary story to scare you, like as a child in the area. We wanted to separate the fact from the fiction, and that's why we ended up showing the Hex Hollow documentary and then the Apprentice to Murder film that you guys saw.
The audience is asking you to speak up.
Sorry, guys. I thought I had a mic, so I thought I was okay. Sorry. Where was I? Start over. No, I won't start over. So the film Apprentice to Murder kind of tied into the book that you guys talked about, The Hex from Arthur Miller. And in that book, as you guys discussed, there's a lot of fallacies in that made Nelson Rehmeyer seem like to be the villain, and more so the people that murdered him showed a lot of empathy towards them, and sympathy that they were under some spell and were drawn to commit this crime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So in Hex Hollow, and I don't remember if I asked this. How many of you have seen Hex Hollow? Okay, so about half of you. And in it, they show some people who are still using powwow and how the practice works. And I'd love to interview them. And so when you were showing it, you clearly had to have an interest in the Hex Murder or powwowing. So what kind of led you down this path to co-host this documentary?
Well, when Jim's been a champion in like everything that we've been doing like since the beginning, so I always thank him like first and foremost. And when we decided what we were going to work on, and we've been presenting films and a lot of short films from local filmmakers, and we wanted to incorporate something that was bigger, especially this time of year. And we had mentioned this to him at one of the previous showings that we had, and thought that would be a great idea in order to incorporate the history of York County, everything into it. And I told you from the beginning, my main interest was always the paranormal side of it, but not knowing like all that encompassed like the entire history and everything of it. Was more interested to that. When we sat down with Ross, we spent an afternoon at his house and just asked him like every question under the sun. And if anybody's read the book, they know it's like almost like an encyclopedia of everything that happened during that time. And you really get an understanding of people's mindset during that time and how paranoid they were and how scared they were. And it was just more, that's why we wanted to show both films, because it showed, okay, here's real, here's what's happened. And then here, if you never read the book or were familiar with the book, this is what would scare you into thinking that all this stuff happened.
Right, and demonized. One of the things that Cisco was telling us before we came up here was about the Witch of Marietta. Have you heard of the Witch of Marietta? Right. So if you read Arthur Lewis, he says that when Rehmeyer was trying to figure out why he felt ill, why he could never land a job, why he couldn't find a woman, he was looking for answers. And so we're asking Cisco, what do you know about the Witch of Marietta? And he kind of set us straight.
Yeah, I set you real straight. Yeah. The name of the Marietta witch was Nellie Knoll, and from what history gives us, that person didn't actually exist. And Jim was coming in that she went by another name, but wasn't even really associated with witchcraft or anything. It was just they took the advice of some older woman that told them that they were cursed and they had to kill this man in order to break the curse.
And the legend. So I don't think I mentioned this, but I'm a folklorist. That's what I studied for my doctoral work. And so I thought it would be interesting to tell you what the story is, and you can just believe it or not, right? So when they went over to see Nellie Knoll, she asked them to pull out a dollar bill, and when he pulled out the bill and he looked at it, the face of Nelson Rehmeyer flashed on the bill. And that is supposedly then the reason for his harm and why he was killed. Again, that's a neat legend. Don't know if it happens, and that's why for our original presentation, we didn't want to really get into the legend and folklore part, but it still is an interesting story. Yep.
Yeah, and they show that in the film Hex Murder. So all the, like, so the book is pretty much, the movie is pretty much an adaptation of the book. And all those legends and superstitions and everything that was put in there to scare you, all the black magic and the faces changing, dogs having human faces and everything was all in there.
Yeah, which is still a valuable thing to study. It is still very interesting studying these superstitions, and the folklore is absolutely part of our culture.
Yeah, well, and I just wanted to point out with the recent passing of Donald Sutherland, Apprentice to Murder has sort of come back into popularity because he was in that movie. So there's like a whole new generation that are learning about the Hex Murder that didn't know about it before, but unfortunately they're getting the dramatized version. So I would encourage those people who watch the movie just because they know Donald Sutherland's in it to then, look up Ross McGinnis and try and figure out, the real story of the Hex Murder as opposed to just the Hollywood version.
So Cisco, could you tell us about your great-grandparents? They were down in the southern end of the county. What did you hear about the murder growing up?
Mostly just the ghost stories. I had one of the first times that I was introduced to the story was to a cousin of mine, and they all lived in that area. And, of course, it didn't happen to him directly, but he told me that two of his friends were out in the hollow one night, and his friend had just bought a brand new leather jacket. And when he got home, they were down in the hollow playing around, having a good time. And when he got home, all the hexes were carved in the back of his jacket. And being 5, 6 years old, he said they're telling that story. Of course you believe it. I never saw the jacket, so I don't know if that actually happened.
Yeah. And I love to run. I'm a trail runner, and so I'll go down to Spring Valley, right, and run around there. It is a beautiful area. And I'm an academic, I'm a scholar, but sometimes intuition is a real thing, and vibes are a real thing. And sometimes down there, I run with my cell phone, put it that way. Not that I'm gonna have any service, but I run with my cell phone. So then thinking about, again, your interest in this, or what's your next work? What are you working on?
Well, my friend here, Freddie Graves, everybody say hi, Freddie.
Hi, Freddie.
Hi, Freddie. We're working on a documentary now about Pennsylvania cryptids. So we're covering the Albatwitch, Bigfoot, Swamp. That's the Mothman. I'm still trying to convince him the Mothman is real. Has anybody in here seen the Mothman ever? Anybody sightings? No? Okay. Yeah. But that's currently what we're working on.
Oh, that's interesting. Are there going to be any local creatures that are from like around here that would be in it?
Yeah, if anybody's sitting in the room and they're close to this area, they know the Albatwitch is
Lancaster.
Lancaster and Columbia.
Okay.
And Bigfoot's
And
your
Chickens
county.
Rock. And yes, in your county has had many Bigfoot sightings.
Okay, what about Chupacabra?
I haven't come across it. No, I'm sorry.
So is there anything else that we're going to open it up to the audience? Unless there's anything else we're going to talk about with, again, setting us straight with what the documentary included and facts that we may have missed?
No, just if anybody really is interested, read both books. I mean, Ross's is, like I said, is an encyclopedia. It is kind of hard to get. I think eBay is probably going to be your best bet to find copies. Or I meant to steal one from Ross's house, but we didn't grab one. So if we do go back, we have to take one. And both movies are available like easily online. I want to say the Hex Hollow documentary is free on YouTube, like legitimately free, not like somebody just put it up there, and on Tubi. And I think the Apprentice to Murder is like $3.99 on Amazon. Like you can make it an evening and make it so you kind of have everything she broke down, like the folklore and everything, will tell you the full story.
So now we're going to open it back up again. If you have questions about the documentary, or if now you feel confident and to speak up and share stories.
How did they catch the murderers?
Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Does Jim know
I
this?
think one turned himself in.
Yeah, what happened was that the neighbor heard the mules, the livestock praying, and knew that there was something wrong. And the druid had spotted went down to Town in advance. I mean, people saw them go down there, so it wasn't hard to track them down. By the mic, there was someone, Tim Blommeyer got on and said, on messaging and said that the Blommeyers and the Rehmeyers were actually, they knew each other and were friends. There was actually a case where a Rehmeyer spoke on behalf of the Blommeyer at a major event. So that's interesting that the two were fans of each other real well.
And I think another thing that strengthened the case against them was that they were seen the night before visiting the house as well. So piecing together all those stories, I think got into that.
Yeah, when they went in, they couldn't find exactly where the book was, and they wanted to kind of sniff around first and see if they could find it before they went back to do what they did.
Yep. Okay. Well, on that note, thank you everyone for coming down to Burning Bridge, for patronizing a local restaurant. We're glad that you spent your money and time here at a locally owned establishment. So thank you for supporting our county, as well as Sammy and I's hometown history efforts. And Cisco, thank you much for joining us. So have a great night. Drive safe, everyone.